This is Commanding Leadership. I'm your host, Max Hourigan. Let's get after it. Welcome to Commanding Leadership, the bottom line up front of how to lead and win in business and military operations. This is episode 27. So on today's show, I have a very special person on to talk about everything from brotherhood, family, life in corporate America, and leadership. He's someone I've known for over 27 years and have enormous respect for. My guest today is a business systems analyst at NBC Universal, but even more importantly, he's my best friend and my brother, Ryan Hourigan. Ryan, welcome to the show.
It's an honor to be here, Max. I'm happy to get on your podcast. I've been listening since the first episode, so I'm happy that we were able to link up and do this.
Thanks, bro. Yeah, I'm definitely glad to have you on because, not many opportunities are out there where two brothers can get to talk on a podcast and actually have a fun discussion at the same time.
For sure.
So I think we kick this off by talking about growing up together. You know, we're about 15 months apart, Irish twins, right?
Yep.
And I think just growing up that close in age really gave us companionship throughout our entire brotherhood. And it was just incredible, right? To be growing up with somebody that close to you and just experiencing life with and learning life with. So maybe we start by talking about one of our favorite quotes that really helped us through all of our brotherhood. And that quote was, "Do today what others won't, so tomorrow you can do what others can't." How'd that quote impact you throughout our life?
So, I was real blessed to grow up with a brother. Especially somebody who allowed me to hang around with him and his friends. So I am beyond grateful and thankful that we had each other, for sure, especially being 15 months apart. It's nice to have similar interests and be able to relate to each other.
Yeah.
But the quote, "Do today what others won't, so tomorrow you can do what others can," has impacted me greatly in most facets of my life, especially in my adult life. But growing up, I found it important to put those important things first. So make sure you look out for your brother, look out for your friends, take care of them so that when you need them the most, when you might be hurting or you might need some support or you just want to spend some valuable time with somebody, they're there for you. I could go on about different aspects, but that quote is something I reference on a weekly basis, at least 2 to 3 times a week. But in a professional sense, I like to front load the hard projects so that I can power through them and gain momentum and then keep going and ride the wave and then take that into my personal life when I get home to accomplish, whether it's finances or finishing a book, because then I'm free on the weekend and I can spend time with my wife, my dog, and see family and friends.
Nice. Yeah. I think one of the biggest things from that quote for me is I remember back when we were on a football field, right? And I think I talked about this in your best man speech at your wedding.
You did, yes.
And it was pouring rain out. It was probably 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. And we'd been out there for a couple hours and, sweat's just dripping down our faces. And we're working out, trying to get better for the upcoming baseball season. It might have even been sleeting a little bit because I think it was towards the end of winter.
Yeah, it was gross.
Yeah. So we were doing today what there was no one else out there doing. On our baseball team, we were out there at 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock, just throwing weight around, doing sprints in terrible conditions so we could do something that others couldn't, which would be, excel on the baseball field. And that was kind of our mission, right? All through our life, just do incredible things on the field so we can win. And that's really what stood out to me the most from our childhood, to be honest with you, man. Just being able to go to the limits with somebody who was willing to go to the limits with me as well.
Yeah, I find that very important because if you can get behind a cause with a peer, a friend, or even a sibling, it's that much easier to accomplish the goal that you set out for. So after we spent an evening or an early morning in pretty unwelcomed conditions, it led to something greater than us. And that was for you leading the state for a long while in home runs behind Mike Trout at one point and ahead of him. And then setting the high school record at Passaic Valley for RBIs and home runs. And then for my baseball career, the following season, our team won the county championship, which in New Jersey is pretty impressive. So those little sessions there definitely sucked,
Yeah, they
but
did.
it paid dividends for our aspirations and achieving the goals we set out for, and that was to win and do our best.
Yeah, no, winning the county championship, man, that was a dream come true for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's something I don't think about too much because that was a large part of my life, of course, as is athletics for anybody. But I'm not one of those guys that harp on, the glory days. But thinking back to what we accomplished as a program, it was nice to put that program on the map for those that were to come behind us and those that went before us, your class, those before us that mentored us, etc. But yeah, it was awesome. It was a good experience, and it definitely was a feeling I won't soon forget, and something I'm very happy to experience to go out on top at 17 years old at that time. You think you're on top of the world. It was cool. It's 10 years ago, which
Yeah.
was, it feels like yesterday, but at the same time, it's just a small piece of my life in the back of my mind that I will occasionally think about if I'm watching baseball on TV.
So let's talk a little bit about our family, because I think our upbringing with our family definitely had a lot to do with who we are today. And, we went through it together. And we had a pretty interesting childhood growing up in a house. Both of our parents were alcoholics.
Yep.
And as I've reflected on, the 15 or so years I can remember of our childhood, I've come to the conclusion that what we experienced was both a blessing and a curse. We carry some demons from our upbringing for sure, but I think we've also developed some really good traits because of it. My last episode, John Rennie, he spoke about grit, and grit is the combination of passion and persistence towards a goal. And our goal was to, become the best people possible. So when we're men or adults or parents, we don't have to maybe deliver the same type of experience that we were delivered. Right. So when you reflect on our childhood, what do you think about our childhood had impacted you the most, and how have you kind of grown from it?
So it's a tough question to answer succinctly. So I'll try to sum it up in a few different points in a few sentences. First, I wouldn't change a thing. It was a tough situation for two young children that grew through adolescence, through a formidable time that was challenging. However, I do agree with you with your statement that our upbringing molded us into the men we are today and helped us develop our love, empathy, and understanding for others around us, especially our wives, and for you, your children. I know it was not an enviable task to be the Hourigan boys in that household, but it was great that we had each other. And that goes back to your first point and to the beginning of our podcast. Having a brother 15 months apart was a huge victory when you came home at night and didn't know if you would get yelled at, didn't know if there was going to be a calm dinner session or if it was going to just be the two of us, because one of our parents might be asleep, one might be at work, one might be drinking, etc.
Right.
I'm going on a tangent, but
No, I think you're right on point, because the unknown is scary,
yes.
right?
Oh, yes.
And I think that's what we faced a lot, right? We would come home from practice, working our tails off and wanting to have a nice, relaxing, evening with our family, get to tell them what we did, be so excited about, hey, I hit a home run today in practice, and instead we're staring at somebody face down in a pile of spaghetti.
Yes.
you know
Yes.
so
Yeah.
not to make light of it, but that's what we got to do here, right?
Yeah, it's true. You have to survive.
We've definitely grown from it,
Yeah,
like you said, love,
sure.
empathy, respect, so we don't have a void of those emotions in our adulthood.
Yeah. And I mean, on record, I believe people are inherently good. And I think in those situations that our parents put us in and the situations they were in personally, is we can't relate to them. Everyone's built and hardwired differently and has a different spiritual dimension. But I've forgiven them for that. And it was just a small blip on our childhood, if you would. And it was definitely tough. The unknown was scary. I mean, I did not bring friends or girlfriends around when we were in high school just because I didn't know if someone would be asleep on the couch or in the face deep in spaghetti, which
Yeah.
was that was something to see. But yeah, it was definitely it's the theme of our podcast today is the brotherhood and friendship and being best friends, which your family don't have to be your friends. And I'm very happy that we are friends. And sure, can the term best friend be juvenile? Yeah, but I do believe it's warranted in our situation. You are my best friend. We know each other and we know each other's demons, and we've spent the most time together than anybody on this earth. So,
Amen to that, brother. So let's move into a little bit more about you. I'd like to talk about when you were promoted, right? So you went from intern to ASR to supervisor or
yeah,
manager, right?
yeah, correct.
So what do you think the most important piece of that transition from, I'll call it an individual contributor role, to being a manager was? How did you become an effective leader going from an IC to a manager?
Yeah, you need to listen. It's the most one of the I'll say I use that term too much. It's the most important. It's one of the most important traits a leader can have. Understanding and listening. I wanted to also earn their trust, which I earned as a peer and as a contributor, because if someone was overworked, I'm one that's big on reading body language and understanding how people tick. And if I saw that colleague A was struggling, I would ask colleague A if they needed help. And if they said no, I said, you know what? I see that you still have this outstanding on our spreadsheet. Let me take it from you. I'm pretty free right now. And then that led to those trusting me that I will look out for them and put their best interests in mind when I got my job. And I was open with every single one of them when the position posted, and then I was interviewing for it. And when I was offered the position and I accepted it, the first day I sat down and I told them, look, we're working bottom up in this group. I believe in bottom up leadership. I want to understand what every single one of you want, what you think about the good and the bad in this group. And if you have more knowledge than me in this particular space of the business and a meeting's called and we're all in it, I will give the floor to you and I want you to represent our team. And we did that every week. And I had a friend that now took my position that knew Premier League better than I. And anytime we had a large meeting and we needed to speak to the Premier League matchups that weekend, I'd let him take the floor. And it grew his confidence, and it grew his peers, the ones working with me, their confidence that I would do the same for them when the time arose.
So I want to hit on that one point. So you had teammates who weren't necessarily a leader at that point, but you wanted him to do the presentation. Did I get that
That's
right?
right. Yeah, that's right. So it wasn't a stand up and point at the projector type presentation. It was a roundtable discussion with senior management, asking what we thought about this weekend. And I said, look, I'm going to pass this off to my coworker here because he's more knowledgeable and he can and represent our needs here. And then he took the floor and he started doing that, and that became a routine. And my senior managers loved it. They thought it was awesome. I was encouraging them and I was empowering them to take the next step in their career. And unbeknownst to that guy, he ended up taking my job, like I just referenced. And he is now in a management role in sports, and he's doing the same exact thing. And I hope he's doing it for the ones that he works with.
So it's about developing, right? You're developing
Oh,
it
yeah.
through empowerment. Like I
Yeah.
absolutely love that, because if you're just letting people sit back and let the leader do all of the work, in these presentations, how are they growing as leaders themselves? Because eventually somebody has to replace you,
Yes.
right? I read somewhere, and I don't know who exactly said, I'm sure many people say it, but the goal of a leader should always be to train his replacement.
Yes. And that is what my boss told me when I was hired in that management position. He said, you want to develop someone below you that can take your job in a day.
Yeah.
And I did that with a bunch of people. They went on to do different and great things, relatively speaking, in media. And there were definitely folks below that could step in and do my job when I was out sick. And that was so empowering.
Do you think that having somebody do a presentation, I'll say for you, someone from your team, shows weakness? Because I think some leaders out there always want to make sure they're putting their face out
Yeah,
there.
they're insecure. No, it's the opposite. It shows strength. It shows that you're comfortable. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I check my ego at the door. That's something I worked on in my life. That's something Lindsay, my wife, has definitely helped with too. That, hey, check your ego. Make sure you take a step back and look at the big picture. And I knew everybody respected me because of the hard work that I put in my first 2 or 3 jobs in the company. And I'm still working hard. I have a great brand there, and I had to create myself again with an entirely new organization. And I believe I have a good brand now. But to answer your question, I think it only shows that you're a strong leader, not a weak one, if you can empower those around you and trust them. Because I knew he would step up. I knew the others on the team would step up because I work with them. And your brand is stamped on them, whether you like it or not. So you best get them prepared if you want them to represent.
Right, because they're taking the good, bad, and the ugly from you.
Yeah, for sure. And they go on a job interview and you're putting your name next to it as a reference. If they flunk, that's your image. And I didn't want someone to fail. I wanted everyone else to grow. I wanted them to succeed. Look, I'll probably work for someone that worked for me, and I hate saying they worked for me. It's they worked with me. I'll work for someone one day that he no longer works at the company. He left and he's now working externally in a different industry, but I guarantee you one day I'll be working for this guy. And at some point he worked for me. There are a few of those folks, Yale educated, some of them, a lot of Ivy League kids, and geez, it's just nice to see where they're growing now.
So one real thing I want to make sure we touch on here is when you went from your team, right? When you were a contributor on the team, you were peers with these employees, and then you eventually became a manager of them, and you were on the same team, right?
That's correct. Yes, I stayed. I was in sports. Yes, it's not like I left that small group. No, I stayed with them.
So you went from being a team player to then the coach essentially of that team.
Yeah, in 24 hours, if you want to.
How did you manage to be effective as a leader after you made that shift when you were leading peers? Because I think that's what a lot of people might struggle with sometimes in taking on a leadership role. Like we just promoted somebody at my work who was on the same team. He was in the same quality assurance department, but now he's the supervisor of the department.
Yeah.
Just struggling with leading friends, right? How do you differentiate between a friendship that you had and now you're a supervisor of that friend? How do you balance that?
So like one of your earlier podcasts, keep it simple, stupid. Just be honest, be trustworthy, and know that you have their best intentions in mind. I built my relationship with the team on trust. I said, I'll never make you look stupid, and I expect you to do the same. Let's work together. Let's have an open line of communication. And I'm not just saying that. I didn't have an office, but I had an open door policy. I need you to be upfront with me about projects. I'd rather know if you're going to be out. I will give you all the paid time off you need so I can prep and help your peers versus you calling in sick because you want to go to an MLS soccer game. But I think it's gaining their trust and being honest with them and knowing that you'll take care of them in a business setting.
So I guess what's the most important piece of advice you can give a new manager? Maybe not necessarily coming from the same team, but just a new manager in any role as he begins to learn leadership.
So always ask questions, because you can't be afraid to say, I don't know, I will find out. That always works in sales. But when somebody that works for you asks you a question, if you don't know the answer and you fake it, you're lying to them, and they're going to know that. I didn't know a lot, and I still don't. And I always encourage new managers to get to know the contributors on your team. What I found is you ask until you have something in common with that person that you're talking to. And that goes for employees on your team. You need to get to know what makes them tick. That's what you were great at as a captain, is you knew what made me tick. You knew what made the catcher tick. You knew what made the pitcher tick. Was it just a pat on the back, or was it a stern talking to as to why this moment's important? And it happened. I've had 27 ASRs work with me, and every single one of them operated differently and needed something different.
Right.
So it's just to get to know them on a friendly basis, but don't cross that line where you can't separate friend and then manager-employee relationship.
It's a dichotomy of leadership, right?
Dichotomy of leadership, Jocko at its finest. It warrants an entire book, and now it'll be a full, probably trilogy of books,
right,
with him. But yeah, it's a fine line, and it's hard not to cross. But with time comes practice.
All right, cool. So we'll take a short break and then we'll be right back to talk more about leadership. All right, so welcome back to the show. So we're about to kick off another section here on leadership. So Ryan, what do you think had the biggest impact on your ability to lead, from your transition from being on a team to being a manager of that team to even just leading on the baseball field? Where do you think you got your leadership skills from?
Sure. So there was one instance when I took over this team. I was a junior leader, relatively new. I was pretty green, and there was a situation arised where one of the guys on my team dropped the ball and lost a significant amount of money, some almost $100,000 that we couldn't recoup. And was it their fault? Yes. They did not read what they needed to do that week, and shame on me for not following up. So the first thing I just said was it was their fault. But what does that mean? It's in turn my fault because they're under my management. So when we went to go see the director to explain what happened, he said, "Whose fault is this?" And without thinking, I just said, "Me. It was my fault." So he excused the member of my team, shut the door, and it was someone who was so highly regarded and respected. And he said, "I'm so proud of you." I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "What you just did there." He said, "You could have made that person look so stupid, putting them on blast with their team here, his sales folks. But you fell on that grenade." And I said, "Yeah, why wouldn't I? They report to me. Their error is mine." And he said, "If you keep thinking that way as a manager, you're going to make it real far." And it was an aha moment for me where I was just like, you know what? I'm going to do the right thing. It's going to sting. However, it was my fault. I didn't follow up with them, and that person never made that mistake again, nor did I. I always trust but verify with people if they're doing their work. But again, it's like Jocko, decentralized command, let others, if you give them enough training and credit and they understand the mission, they'll accomplish it.
Dude, I absolutely love that story about your director.
Yeah, he's awesome. And I mean, I was legitimately sweating. I sweat a lot.
Yeah, you
I
do.
run hot, but I was sweating through my shirt and I was scared because I wasn't going to get canned. But I knew I could look stupid, and I said, I'd rather look stupid than have this 22-year-old young buck look stupid and feel inadequate in his first job.
Yeah, that guy, your director, he could have went anywhere
Oh,
with that discussion, right? But he chose he chose to say something that has now fundamentally changed the way you view leadership.
yeah, and he was a tough dude from Queens.
Yeah. I
And
mean, those types of moments, they don't come by very often. And, you're not always given that opportunity often as a leader to have that impact on somebody that profoundly.
yeah,
But if he had done something different and said, Ryan, what the heck are you doing? And got on you and made you feel inadequate. He could have said, Ryan, I'm very disappointed in you. You did the wrong thing. You really should have trained your people well. And that would have been okay. But he did something that you totally didn't expect.
oh yeah, I was surprised. I mean, worst case, he would have scolded me. Sure, has that happened from management in my career? Of course, everyone gets.
Sure. And you need it sometimes. Sometimes
Yeah,
you need to be you need to hold the firm line and,
yep.
be a little bit hard on your guys. But it's just incredible that he chose to not do that and essentially, be an empath almost.
Yeah, and the ripple effect would have been felt if he treated it differently, because then I would have started micromanaging that person.
So you've got the good there, right? The good of leadership. But I think you've also seen maybe bad leaders, or we'll call it the good, bad, and the ugly, right? So how have you taken away the good from the leadership that you've had, but how have you also learned what not to do, maybe from some of the underperforming or poor leaders that you've been maybe not working for, but work alongside or know?
Sure. So the good leaders you want to go to battle with, in a way. You want to do your best work for them because you want to make sure you're living up to the standard they set. The bad leaders show a lack of interest. They also have a way of not being there physically to help you. And I said earlier, a pat on the back goes a long way. My current boss sent me a text the other day. Hey, really proud of you. And it was just so out of nowhere. And I just had my performance review with him, and I thanked him for that. And he thought it was nothing, but to me, it made my day, made my work week, and made me work extra hard. And I want to make sure that I put out for that guy.
It's
Because
just a
if
little bit of appreciation. It goes a long
yeah,
way.
geez, that text took what, 8 seconds?
Yeah.
And
But now
it made
you're here talking about it on a podcast, you know?
8 days, yeah, days later.
Yeah. So what about some of the bad leaders that you've had? How have you
Yeah,
learned what not to do?
bad leaders just try to make, sometimes they're so insecure with themselves that they just talk down to you and make you feel so worthless and stupid. And sometimes you get to the point where you believe it. And that's where it's the make or break mindset, that you have to understand your value and your worth. And I found I would never treat someone with disrespect. And of course, everyone's been disrespected, but to be spoken down to, and this wasn't a direct manager of mine, it was a person in sales I worked for, was it, if I performed, it impacted their bottom line, but I performed clearly. I was promoted to manage that group. But he just never treated me with respect. And I worked for him for 10 months. And to this day, when I see him, he tries to joke around, oh, what are you doing for me these days? You going to help me do this or that? I said, no, I have nothing to give to you. That's not me being rude, but I'm not sticking my neck out for someone that doesn't look out for his peers. And most people on that floor know who that person is, and they know how to deal with that situation. But it was untenable. It was an uncomfortable situation. I would get a stomach ache some days just thinking about going to work.
But let's say you were an employee on that team, right? And you have to work for this guy every single day. There's a reason why 70% of employees are disengaged at work.
Yes.
And actually, I saw this the other day. 49% of people leave their jobs because of their manager.
And I believe it. I know. And whether it's just them not believing in you or setting you up for success by giving you additional work in new spaces or sending you to additional trainings or just believing in you, or if it's being spoken down to in a hostile work environment. Did I feel it was hostile? No. Was he ever aggressive verbally? Sure, maybe, but it's sales. It's not Mad Men. But yeah, it was uncomfortable. But 70% of people is not too far off base. I have a lot of friends that don't like their work environment because their managers don't believe in them and they don't look out for them, and they're not fostering their growth, which is one of the most important things a leader should do for you. There's managers and leaders. Leaders look out for you. Managers are pushing paper and trying to get the job done without understanding that there's a human being on the other side of the computer or the phone or that person that you're sending their paychecks.
Wow, I love that difference between a manager and a leader. I think I've seen a picture of that somewhere, but that's amazing to hear.
There's a big difference, and people can tell immediately. At least I can. Again, I think I have a good pulse on folks.
Yeah, you do. Definitely do. Maybe that has something to do with us growing up together and the situation.
Yeah, 100%.
So what about good leaders? Good leaders can make an underperforming team great. Or better yet, good leaders can make an average team great.
Yes.
Right? So we both love Jocko
Yep.
and the book Extreme Ownership. So in this book, Jocko and Leif Babin both talk about a super impactful story from Buds, where the fact that good leaders can make an average team great resonates. So, and I'll just recap it here real quick for those who hadn't or haven't listened to or read Extreme Ownership. So there were these two boat crews, Boat Crew 2 and Boat Crew 6. These boat crews were racing from the beach in a rubber boat, you could say, a large rubber boat. They'd go into the water, move the boat through the water, and then go back onto the beach. And after numerous evolutions of this exercise, Boat Crew 2 was almost always guaranteed to come in first place every time. They were always the winner. And Boat Crew 6 was almost always in last place. And it was noticed that the leader of this last place crew, Boat Crew 6, was always losing his cool during the race and after when they lost. And that he was letting his inexperience get in the way of leading his team the right way. So at some point, the instructors kind of caught on to this, and they decided to swap the leaders of the two boat crews. The one that was always winning went to the one that was always losing, and the one that always lost went to the one that always won. So now you have a flustered leader who's always been losing in charge of the team that's always been winning, and the steady leader who's always been winning, now with the team that always loses. Well, guess what? The confident leader, the one who went to Boat Crew 6, the team that always lost, after he went to their team, they started to win.
Shocker.
So this story just goes to show how leadership really does matter, right?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in bringing the energy. So from experience, I prided myself on those on my team that would get promoted. And was it a combination? I think it was because I hired the right people and I put them in a position to succeed. Like I said, I'm hiring people who are smarter than me so I could surround myself with folks who make the overall organization better. As Steven Schwartzman, the founder of Blackstone, says, you want to hire 10s on a 1 to 10 scale. 10s move the needle, and their worst day is better than most folks' best day. So the team that I worked with, these folks were getting promoted left and right, and then we would fill that role with another high-achieving performer, and they were getting promoted. And we were the best organization in all of account services, and I'm proud of that. And I can say that confidently. It might sound cocky, but I just know from numbers we were. It's similar to that boat crew. I look at other teams and I'm wondering, why aren't these folks getting promoted as fast as the sports ASRs? And I realize it's lack of mentorship. It's not that the manager lacked the ability. It's probably that they did not put in the effort that I was, or taking the next step to mentor and care about where they wanted to go. I found that they were just lacking engagement from their direct manager. And I gave it to them. I gave them an outlet to just bounce ideas off of. And then I gave them the truth of whether I thought, in my humble opinion, this was a good idea or a bad idea, and how they could set themselves up for their next job, and not just their next job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and working their way back, how they could become a director of creative marketing.
What do you think having that open dialogue with those employees or those people, how does it impact them? Because, some people feel like they can't go talk to their manager, or they can't have those discussions where they can just bounce ideas off of because they're fearful that they'll just be shut down.
Yeah, it's a fine line. It starts with day one. You just need to set the expectation that I am here to get you promoted. I want you to come to me with your ideas and how best we can serve you. Who am I to keep you in this position if you want to get out and you want to go into consulting? But yeah, I pity folks that don't have an open relationship with their managers. I have a great one with every manager I've really had, but that's because I also worked at it.
Right.
Like, I know what it's like to manage, so I know what it's like to be treated properly. And when I was interviewing for this current job, I was feeling him out, his management style, just as much as he was feeling out my work ethic. We were interviewing each other in a way. And that's how I think it should be handled in all interviews. Because if you're going to go work for someone 40, 50, some fields 120 hours a week, it's like the airport test. If your flight's delayed for 2 hours, do you want to surround yourself with these people?
Nice. Yeah, so let's move into, we're kind of getting close to the end here, but I want to make sure we hit our lightning round of questions here at the end.
Yeah, let's go.
So let's shoot for maybe 1 minute to 2 minutes. I've got about 6 questions on life and leadership. So just say the first thing that comes to your mind, and we'll see where we go with this. You ready?
Yes.
Okay, so what leader has inspired you the most in your leadership journey so far?
Okay, so first it's you. It sounds corny because Thanks. This is your podcast. That's a shameless plug here. I've seen you grow from a single contributor in an organization to now managing, whether it's double or triple digit, also on the side hustle, starting this podcast, and then being an officer in the Army National Guard, as well as providing for a family. It's not easy to swing 3 full-time jobs that I just listed.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to your favorite leadership book.
Okay. So I'll give you a few because you and I both share the same. First, it's any Jocko Willink book.
Oh, yeah.
So that was my first one. And then most recently I read a book from Bob Iger, the former, and I think he's still current, but he's stepping down soon, CEO of Walt Disney. It's called The Ride of a Lifetime, Bob Iger. And it journals his rise to one of the most powerful positions in business from a production assistant, and just showing anything's possible if you set your mind to it.
Nice. And what about the 3 most important things you do in the morning as part of your morning routine? Because I think morning routines are what set us up for success for the day.
Yeah, I love this question. So you could ask Lindsay, my wife, that I was the worst morning person for the longest time. Now, the first thing I do is after we wake up, I go on a walk with our dog, Oakley. I go on a walk, and during the week it's alone. On weekends it's together. But that fresh air early in the morning before everyone else is awake is the best time of day to think. So 1, I go on a walk. 2, I don't look at my phone, or try not to unless something's urgent, for the first 30 minutes. Whether it's if I need to look at my bank account for something, or if I need to talk to someone, yes, I'll break that code. So go on a walk, don't look at your phone for 30 minutes, and then exercise. I found that if I exercise in the morning, everything's just, my synapses are firing, whatever the scientific reasoning is, it just works best for me. And then also eat a strong, healthy breakfast and a dark cup of coffee.
Oh yeah, gotta have that coffee. All right, so moving into, what are your 3 guiding values in your life?
Be kind, listen, and have fun. I mean, Lindsay's taught me how to be kind. I also am one to give love. I have a tattoo on me that says, "I am my brother's keeper." Whether it's literally as you and I check in on each other, or figuratively, just looking out for others. If someone drops their wallet, giving it back to them.
Yeah.
I try to live that motto in all facets of my life.
Nice. Now, if you wanted to have dinner with your favorite leadership icon, who would you want to share that dinner with?
Wow.
Can I answer for you?
Yeah.
Derek Jeter.
Yeah. I mean, I was trying to see if it was realistic or a dream.
Yeah.
Derek Jeter, I mean, look at him. His career he was just the picture perfect athlete in the largest market in the world, where not one negative thing was written about him. And now, as part owner of a professional franchise, do they stink? Yeah. But I don't think that's a direct reflection of his business acumen. But yes, he's taken risks, and he's just developed into just a mogul. But yeah, him, I mean, any sitting or former president, I think, would be cool to talk to.
Yeah.
Or just a visionary. Like although he might be off his rocker, Elon Musk, the guy's brilliant. I mean, he's in like every industry possible, in industries we don't even know exist, probably.
And just the amount of failures he's overcome to remain relevant in today's society.
Yeah, for sure. He's just a visionary, and he's brilliant. And just, he might be tough to work for, but he's not worth that much money for no valid reason.
All right, so last question here. If you wanted the audience to take anything away from this show today, what piece of advice would you want them to walk away with?
So I think it's a quote that you and I have talked about in the past, and we talked about earlier, but you don't want to fear the unknown, but you always want to take the hardest problems. Is something that my current boss really values, is saying, take that hard problem, because the harder the problem, the less competition there is to solve it. And it's true. And it's also lonely at the top. So in a management perspective, the top is just managing your peers. You have to be confident in your decision and stick by it. But when you're an individual contributor, take those tough problems, because not many people are going to raise their hands to solve it. But when you do solve it, you look that much more impressive, and that those above you are going to come to you for a solution when something else comes up.
Excellent. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on to the show today. Who would have thought that, 20-something years ago, we'd be talking about life and leadership on a podcast together.
And it was an honor. I'm happy we made this work. I love what you're doing with the podcast, and I'm excited to see the other guests you'll get on here, because I do believe this is definitely going to get traction, and it's going to be a staple in the podcast section for leadership for sure.
So if anyone really wants to get a hold of you, if you've said a lot of profound things on the show today, where can someone reach out to you?
So I'm not really that big on social media. I have a small presence. I post maybe once a month, but Hourigan is my handle for Instagram. And then Facebook's the first and last name, Ryan Hourigan. And yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, same thing, first and last name. So
awesome.
I started to use LinkedIn more, so that would be a good medium to reach me.
LinkedIn's the way to go, man.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, Ryan, this has been an absolute pleasure having you on, man. Just getting to pick your brain on your growth from an individual contributor all the way to management and leadership, and then just talking about our family on this podcast to have that discussion. Thank you so much.
Of course, bro. I love you, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, I love you too, man. Thank you guys so much for tuning into Commanding Leadership. Now, Now, if you have any questions that you want me to answer on this podcast, feel free to text me at 508-964-3474, or you can find me on my website, commandingleadership.com. I'll see you on the next episode.